It's not about what they can do for us. It's about what we can do for ourselves. That is specifically what Sierra's talking about when she says, I love you, mommy. You believed it. That was the problem. Now what we need to do is find it in ourselves to create for ourselves, name for ourselves, and stop to letting other people define what we think is beautiful and stuff like that. Now, they say that we need to have, that there's an exclusion DA. We specifically say that, yes, an exclusion happens, but Auntie Lord specifically talks about how poetry is not a luxury, it is a vital necessity for our existence and forms of quality of life within. We predicate our hopes and dreams towards survival and change first into language, then as ideas to more tangible action. Poetry is the way that we can name to the language. So, cross the Bible, Sierra is talking about how she is disposable within this space. Yes, we're excluded within this space, but what do we do to change that? We create survival strategies for ourselves so that we are able to combat that. We do that through our poetry. Now, also they talk about how, also cross the line when they say Beyonce is not the typical version of what beauty is. That is a tokenized DA right there. That is how they use Beyonce is based on how what is qualified as beautiful and white ideas. That's why in some pictures she is darker skinned and in other pictures she is light in. That is a lot of times when you see pictures, you don't see her in her kinky hair, you see her in straight white hair. This is what we're talking about, but this cannot be solved by them. This is something that has to be solved by the negative. Now, I'm gonna tell you a story real quick. When I was a freshman in college, I got a texturizer on my hair, right? And what this texturizer basically does is it takes my kinky hair and it makes it more straight. It makes it seem more that it's notions of white. Now, the problem with this is that they think that the beauty and ugly is something that is very conscious, but a lot of times this beauty is unconscious. I did not know that I was consciously making the choice to be white because it's so embedded in our society. But also the problem is that I had to cut off my own hair. It was something that I had to do for myself because nobody else could do that. Nobody else can help me love myself. Nothing that the affirmative can do can change that. Now, go on to the prerequisite. They are not a prerequisite to this discussion. This is just exactly how they reaffirm their beauty within this debate space because they're telling us that you need our help to break down these binaries. No, we don't. This is the way of re-centering their voice by perpetuating the beauty that they claim to solve for. Now, but you tell your concept that the other is a black woman because without them, there'll be no black body. This is proven by the fact that the examples that they use about Sarah Brightman is an African woman. No white women are not seen as aesthetically ugly. The doll test proves this when they give little kids, when I talk about the unconscious part of it, they give little kids these dolls and they say, which one do you want? And they pick the white kid over the black kid. This is exactly what we are talking about. Now, on to privilege DA. They should not be able to affirm ugly when you cannot aesthetically prove that they are already beautiful. They cannot affirm ugly. And if they are going to perform it, then if they are going to affirm it aesthetically, they have to perform it. They cannot just say, we're going to be able to, we are beautiful, but we're going to be able to affirm ugly. Performance, yeah, you have to perform ugly. This is not a way to dismantle the binary. This is the way he said that he is beautiful as a white man. This is seen as beautiful because he is able to perform what society has gendered him as being a male. That is why it's seen as beautiful. Now, on to... We need new ideas, especially new ways to interpret our lives and view policy. Larry Young, former philosopher, author of Black Lives Matter, running the drama review of 1968. The Western writer aesthetic has run its question and impossible to construct anything meaningful when it became church. We advocate a cultural revolution and ideas and arts and cultural values inherent in Western history must either be radicalized or destroyed, and we will probably find that even a radicalization is impossible. In fact, what is needed is a whole new system of ideas. Larry Young also says the motive behind the black aesthetic is the destruction of the white thing, the destruction of the white ideas and the ways that the white ways of looking at the world. The new aesthetic is mostly predicated on ethics. Ask the question, whose vision of the world is formerly more meaningful or to the white oppressors? What is truth, our truth, or shall we express it to the oppressed or the oppressors? Specifically talking about when we say the white aesthetic, we're specifically talking about the affirmative and how this is a radicalized form of the aesthetic by saying we're going to affirm ugly because we're traditionally seen as beautiful. No, you cannot do that. That is just a radicalization of white ways of putting themselves at the center of the discussion. And then he specifically talks about how that needs to be destroyed. Now, our affirmers who best performs the political agency and rights of liberation of the press as it relates to resolution or the debate community, we think that we do this best. Now, Bell specifically talks about the affirmation of aesthetics or existence of forms of oppression time. I need to get to the
Three,
the social stability of the academic and political possibility, the hybridity of identity, which is also already exclusive of the blackness status. Blackness is not able to be symbolized because of lack of the ontological status given the service story, stability requires a complete erasure and gratuitous otherness of blackness. What is in 2010? To uncover the aesthetic complex of grammar, simply predicated and simply position of seven and sleep is that today's intellectual particle culture not informed by ontology only finally admitted to leaving the existence of the white side does not permit us to understand the being of the black we now in the political academic cinematic which stresses the rights to the university and participation, hybridity, access, and contribution of radical French political discourse amounts to little more than a passionate dream of civic reform and social ability, intellectual progress, and represents one of the two domains of the subjectivity, never precaution, entry, political unity, social attitude, civil participation, diversity, unconscious identification. The upshot of this is that the intellectual report cards now blatant and high rather than an expensive grammar something which underwrites the U.S. and its foundation and antagonist. This state of the affairs exaggerates or morphosity, massifies the veil, the ontological depth of the slave, the civil society ruptures and maintains stability, but the stability of the state of emergency for the Indians and the blacks and blackness is required for the stability of the civil society, but blackness cannot write itself into being, it cannot be represented on a level symbolic where status operates with since 2010. Blacks can write themselves into being. Such project can find genuine rigorous attention to those issues that concern blackness and social formation and resistance, but it's less to say the second thing about the black world resistance, which so many black scholars involved in slave narrative, and particularly writing the depth of the black body and anti-century slavery narrative gave voice to the emergence of the objectivity into protective subjectivity should not be forgotten that the abject muteness of the black body is not existent to be without effect. The object body is that the very subtle material of the experience itself, and writing the depth of the African body is enforced abstraction. Mark down slowly make the distinction between the black body is able to resist, right? They're able to perform that aesthetics, right? But they are not able to have the ontology that they were talking about. The ontology that they were talking about, because they were always in the question of who we be, which is something that they do not come to power with. They say that we need to have it towards the state or the power of the state, but if you have no ontology, that has something that you can never take to the state in the first place to appeal to it. Say, state, how can you, how do we break this down, or what can we do about this? The state does not identify it, because to the state is always seen as something that is unrevealable, i.e. when they say things like, the reason why the black body is so can't have so much gratuitous violence against it is because the state is not able to recognize it. That's why it is seen as a civilian. It can be seen as a terrorist. It can be seen as ugly because it's not recognizable to the state, which means that they will never be able to break down those binaries they were talking about. Also, they say we claim DA that we're not able to that the hierarchy will be able to take in. We're taking these beauty standards. We think that this is something that has to be done within, which means that.
Why is, according to bell hooks, why is poetry or alternative versions of art good?
She simply talks about it's a way, performance of poetry, music, dance, and things like that is a way to beat back.
How does this occur?
Because specifically when we are able to love ourselves, specifically when I talk about how we are able to affirm ourselves, how we are able to do it for ourselves, it's something that is not able to be done by anybody else.
So based on my understanding of Hooks, I feel that she concludes that this creates a new type of, or that poetry creates a new form of expression that is good, that should be valued based on aesthetic tendencies or beauty and stuff like that. Doesn't that seem to create a counter beauty standard?
No.
Why not?
Because you're making it like we created this binary, yes, exactly. It's a way to beat back. It's a way to beat back, not to create.
Then what do you mean when you say we think that you have created this binary?
What do you mean when I say what?
You just said.
I said that we are not able to create this binary. We are already seen as.
Not?
Because
we don't have a social standing to do so.
We are already seen as ugly. We are only beating back we are only beating back what society has said. We are not creating this binary.
Okay, that's cool. What does the negative team do if you have not created this binary and instead the white body has, what does the negative do to call out the white body?
That is exactly what we're doing. We're saying that we need to affirm ourselves and stop saying what the white body can do for us. You can't do shit for us. You cannot destroy a binary.
To break down the oppressive.
We do it by performing. That's what you're missing. So, we don't need to say fuck.
Why does the white body care?
We don't give a fuck about the white body. We do not give a fuck. It's not about you right now. Sure. It's not about you.
What's in your criticism of us?
That is not about you.
It is not about you.
You keep saying
you want to break down the binary between beauty and ugly. We say we are already at the position of ugly. The only way that we can, do this is by affirming ourselves to get out of this idea of what beauty and ugly is.
How does that escape what beauty and ugly is.
Because-
It looks like it says the black.
Okay, if you look at, okay, right, the state has already established, like, what is ugly, all this other stuff, right? And if you look at the Black Power movement, when people started wearing their hair in like afros and trying to like reclaim, it was something they did for themselves. It wasn't based on what the state said they should do. It wasn't based on, they weren't going to the state like, hey, state, we're gonna wear our hairs in afros. Like, what? No, it's about what we can do for ourselves.
So
We don't need you. Basically, the negative solves your affirmative.
oh, okay, yeah.
Like,
Can
I
you
don't
explain
understand.
that claim with words?
What?
Can you explain that claim?
Okay, you're saying that there's a psychological violence that happens. We say yes, but the only way that we can break that down, or the only way we can solve for
So
that,
how do you solve
is by
that?
affirming
How do you
ourselves.
solve this?
You say exclusion. We said that the only way that we can deal with exclusion is through survival strategies.
Did you want prep? Or no?
Did you flash the?
Did you want prep?
I'll give it to you.
Did you flash the cards?
I'll email it to
Do
you.
we want prep or not?
No.
Okay, no prep. We're good to go.
Let me.
Before you start, can I
Yeah.
get the aesthetics ontology cards?
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
It's okay. What time it is?
I forgot to ask the first one.
Tired.
Which person? Everybody's in the same thing.
Yeah, I think if you just hit apply all.
Do you have a flash drive? That'll probably be easy.
Okay.
Oh shit. Not on my own phone. Save.
It's almost as if,
Yo.
like, you could take the onus to figure that out.
Are y'all talking?
No, I'm asking her how to save this on what document, because I don't know how to really work this Mac yet.
That really sounds right.
No, if you're still in prep. We're asking questions to each other.
Is it called HHS?
Is it what?
HHS. Yeah,
How
it's
you
from,
call it?
it's from high school.
Oh.
HHS DS debate. My junior year. Yeah, sure. I don't think it's on here. What was it called?
It's called CEDA Triples Trinity Cards.
No, it's not on here.
You probably know how to work this, but
Yeah, I have a Mac. I can look.
I just want to hear this.
Save it on your desktop and then drag and drop it. Okay, save it on your desktop and then go to your desktop. Sorry.
You know what?
There it is right there. Oh wait, don't open it. Then just drag it to wherever the flash drive is. Here, can I?
Yeah,
sorry. I think if you open up the Finder. There it is. Yeah, you can exit. It'll say like don't pull it out, but it doesn't really care.
Yeah, I don't listen to it.
That's really all good.
Sorry, what?
I was this as on their case too within my poetry. So yeah, it'll be there. You'll see it. Okay. Now, this is an explanation of why the education is bad. Sit back and imagine you're 5 years old being told you're black, and even worse than that, a black female. Most of your predictable leaders and heroes you read in predictable history books looks nothing like you. Who should I aspire to be? Where are my Nubian queens? Growing up, Disney princesses look nothing like me. We got Tiana now, but for the majority of the movie, she was a frog, stripped of humanity. Couldn't enjoy the beauty, but I guess that was reality because of society. Black beauty is an oxymoron. Black women are ugly. Black women aren't human, just a mere commodity. That's why it's easy to kill us. In Texas, a black mother is killed by security at Walmart for stealing petty theft. Would a white mother get that same treatment? No, because beauty doesn't invite violence. Beauty is protected and guarded. Ever heard of Marjorie Mason, black domestic violence victim, killed by her patriarchal husband? Their form of education is better than that same racist patriarchal nature, masked with empathy and good intentions, but it's really erasure. Because of their beauty, they can't change that structure. As a child, I looked in the mirror and imagined a white face looking at me. I was disgusted with the reality of my reflection growing up. I was placed in an indefinite detention of my mind, and I wondered why. I was constantly looked over, doors held by my black brothers were closed on me, but held open for the white lady, constantly fighting for my humanity and rights of humanity. Disheartened when my own son came home from school to tell me that he learned black was synonymous with ugly. I showed him a picture of black people. He said they were ugly. I asked him why. He said because they're black, because they're dark. Where do you think this stuff starts? In public education, amongst the peers of the kindergarten playground, the place where hate becomes the foreground for the way my son should view himself. Can you sit back and remember staring in the mirror and hoping your reflection was lighter, hair, longer, a different texture, not to be ugly? Reclamation, this is the answer, does not apply. Even in the 1AC, they say the dominant group determines what is and what isn't ugly. I do not have the power as a marginalized individual to change beauty standards. Even when I make the claim that my mother is beautiful, they can never be a standard for all of society. They are ahistorical, and they must lose just based on that. If they can't understand the history of bleachy creams and weaves and colored eye contacts, Beyonce is beautiful only because she appeals to the white aesthetic. Privilege, their failure to confront their privilege means that their performance epistemologies are embedded with that privilege. Therefore, any type of action that they claim are doing for the other is just another form of co-optation. And you cannot perm us. I say fucking no to perms. See this shit right here? Fuck your permutation. You can't do it. Now, no solvency. The perm is a link to the white aesthetic, so there's solvency deficit for how they can access our disposability impact. Their perm will be a passive life negating in the eyes of anti-blackness because it doesn't fit into their notion of politics. 2, all the links function as disasset permutation. They still link to the white aesthetic that needs to be destroyed as per video evidence. They say we need a new system of ideas instead of trying to radicalize the calcified white ones. Now, your perm is a white mechanism that eats the other. It acts as ways to commodify our culture and control the conversation on libertary practices and debate. This is impacted by the inverted epistemology, what Charles Mills wrote, which is the ideology of white supremacy that is perverted way in which we view the world, which is ultimately constructed race and racist practices, including genocide. The argument that they are a mask of imperialism allows you to recenter and secure the dominance of white supremacy with tools of suppression. This is their exclusion. This ad right there answering that bitch. Now, perm acts as an unmarked center of cultural power that allows for them to impose their objective disconnection narration into our bodies. Because they are not personally connected to their politics, this is a desensitizing disaster to their permutation plan. The impact is that it perpetuates technocratic forms of politics that operates and creates policies without really considering the lives affected by the policies it creates. It commodifies the lies and justifies fascism and genocides. Bell Hooks in '96 stated that the commodification of blackness strips away the component of culture and genealogy that links living memory and history in ways to subvert and undermine the status quo. When this discourse of blackness is no way connected to the effort to promote the collective black self, determination, it becomes simply another resource appropriated by the colonizers. This is why they cannot affirm the ugly, because they just appropriated by the colonizer and just reify those structures. Which means that because their discourse is not genuinely connected with the fight of the black self when they commodify our bodies with the orientation, we cannot effectively challenge the status quo, which means that they don't solve, and you cannot perm a performance. And perm, again, is in theory bad because in regards to performance of black bodies is parasitic and necrophilic upon the existence and journey and essence of a blackness in order to kill off our resistance and put black women into an obedient position of passivity. And a trade-off this ad means that the status quo makes the status quo worse because it discourages marginalized voices to continue to participate in debate because they cannot bring in their competitive methodology. And your perm is predicated on the recentering of their voices and epistemological destruction of the black human body. It is an elusive view from nowhere that will place us on the back burner. And Lupita this ad. Now, when whites affirm anything, it becomes a tool of white beautification. That means because they cannot destroy that black and white ugly binary, they only reify it. They cannot control how their aesthetic is politically deployed to be a part of the somatic norms of whiteness.
Read that real quick.
Co-option.
For their
For answering their co-option is that
White men cannot co-opt anything that comes from within loving yourself is something within. That one thing that the state or anything can take away from you.
Cannot take away.
Cannot take away from you. If you got anything else, I got plenty of time.
Just tell us something about like the idea about the space tuitions. So is that like why is it not people how they are exclusive of everything?
Okay, the answer to Armstrong just add how the aesthetics is not a prerequisite. It is not a prereq to dialogue to the debate community because again, since they have not confronted their privilege of what they are as the white aesthetic, how they are already affirmed within this debate space as beautiful, even though they try to deny it and say that his partner is seen as ugly, they still cannot get to the fact of the matter just because that they are the white body, they cannot have the, basically whatever they touch, what a white person touch, it becomes beautiful. And I can explain Lupita. Let's explain Lupita. Lupita is the woman who won the Oscar award. Lupita, in traditional norms, would be seen as ugly, but because white people sat out there and said, oh, look at her, she's wonderful, she's this, suddenly she became unconventionally beautiful. So the fact of the matter is, because you say you can affirm the ugly, you think you are destroying these norms, but really all you're doing is recreating other norms.
We'll take a breath. One second, please. You can take a breath. Yeah.
What's that?
that works when we flash it to you? Okay. Okay, I just have it. Can you move this? Yeah, wait. I'm sticking right here. There's nowhere else I can. Yeah, it just picks up the sound better.
Well, yeah, but he has to put the stand there, I think is
Yeah,
what he's saying.
I gotcha. Just wherever you put the stand will somehow fit. I can just do this. What? I can just pull up that desk because there don't be an issue. I mean, like, that's doesn't bother me, so.
I'm just like so broken. So many parts of my phone. This is a new case. This is what's upsetting. Yeah. I should probably spend $100 protecting that.
Yeah. For sure. See the flash drive or? I see it. Yeah. Alright, we're good? Okay. The impacts of the one-to-two conceded beauty regimes are unequivocally and always oppressive. Our principal evidence and our meanings that they said they always create a hierarchy, which one group is on the top and another group is on the bottom, and lead to bad first is social exclusion. Those groups that with our dreams ugly are always pushed to the peripheries of society and mental health care, middle care, healthcare, etc. And economic opportunities, political accountability is not provided to them, and warfare is done to them to destroy them because they are ugly. The second is psychological violence, which they have conceded is the feeling we all get when we look in the mirror and feel that we are not good enough, always cutting and carving ourselves. Now, standards are not always centered around the black. Is not always centered around the black body. There are standards in beauty in all cultures. In the Asian culture, there is the idea of the geisha for women. In Mexican culture, there is an idea that men need to be seen themselves as aggressive. They consider an example of how in Nazi Germany there was the idea of the Aryan versus Jew within society's log. The 1AC is not exclusively about you. Rather, argues that we have provided a heuristic for understanding the world and say that whenever you encounter beauty regimes, you should deconstruct them and destroy them. That is the thesis of Arminius evidence and is the advocacy of the 1AC. If you agree with that, you should vote for affirmative. Now they make an argument how we replicate the binary. We do not replicate the binary. The affirmative is an act of self-dating as a thesis of our Taylor evidence or principle evidence by in declaring we are ugly. We rupture the aesthetic norm because the status quo codes white bodies and white institutions as beautiful. This is our solvency argument that their inability to see white bodies as anything but beautiful proves that they have bitten into the aesthetic contract that they will forever deem white bodies as the standard of beauty, it's the standard of perfection that the black body is excluded from, which means that even if they don't replicate, we don't replicate the binary, they are the ones that live their lives in the binary. They've also ignored that Maggie is in the room. She represents part of the ugly binary, which is that she is woman. That's a thesis of principal evidence. Now, the criticism at the top first, the ontology debate. They set a category of ugly had to have come before the black body. Otherwise, they are ahistorical. They have no explanation for how black bodies were coded to get on the slave ships when he came to Africa. Our claim that there was an aesthetic category where it was crouched certain ideas of whiteness before we even met black people to be inferior, and that is what put them on the slave ships. Our Armstrong evidence is an answer to their Willison claim and says that their argument is bankrupt. The body is just a body, but the aesthetics is the grammar that lets us understand the body. Their argument, they simply view the self in relation to the state, i.e., that we can only understand black aesthetics in relation to slavery. Our claim is that reproduces imperialism. Instead, we should think of bodies themselves in relation to aesthetic. They have no explanation for the slave that chooses to be the slave master. Scheinberg conceptually frames the transformation in terms of sexual life from wilderness to civilized plantation. The metaphor charts unfinished imperial desire to drive people the boundaries of the British culture. Shelley employs colonial language. The Verney is colonized. Aesthetic colonization empowers them to feel like a colonizer. It felt like a civil for the shores of America. Psychology by mimics the dual purpose of civilizing religion, which serves to extend British power abroad. The third argument is they have not answered our claims of diaspora. There are beauty standards within oppressed minorities, which are not always in relation to the white body. The fact that that she throws off her I don't actually know the name for that thing, but through that off sort of proves our argument that there is an idea of what it means to be beautiful within black society, but that is in itself still oppression, because it codes us those that buy into other beauty categories as less than human or something on that level. Now, our example of Beyonce is that their argument that she is white for white audiences but made darker for black audiences proves our argument of how there are beauty regimes even for those cultures. Now, the permutation debate. First, the perm is a test of competition. Anything else resolves into plan debate, which makes the possible for us to be affirmative. We are not stealing their advocacy. Rather, our claims that our methods are not contradictory or do not go in the opposite direction. You should go away. Their argument about women experiencing black beauty is exactly the problem. It used to be the history textbooks. Our claim is that our claim is that you can uncover black thought and black resistance, but it does not be time. But that is an ethical question. It is not an aesthetics question. Our claim is aesthetics are always problematic. What do you get from saying Nefertiti was beautiful? We have a couple of disadvantages and that benefits to the presentation. The first is no co-optionists that are barbarians indicates that their claim of, this is a survival strategy for us is used by white men who capitalize on what it means to have black beauty to increase their social capital. He gives the example of men who go into barbershops, which means that self-love will not help you survive or nor help you survive. The second is the reclamation disadvantage. Their argument that said in their poem when they say that they exemplified by my mother is beautiful is exactly the problem, because you are not creating an aesthetic category at broad. But what would it mean to say your mother was ugly? What does that mean to say my mother's ugly? If you the claim of the one who sees to say my mother's ugly is a good thing because it ruptures the aesthetic contract, then you should vote affirmative on this question. Our claim is that they have reinforced the notion that a body can be judged based on aesthetics, the way that the eye can see that body, which is our disadvantage to the one AC. Now the alternative is we are a privilege. They're all first we control uniqueness. We are the one making claims that the male gaze and internalized now because we have a community, which means you cannot have a community that is safe for black women because it's psychologically sexist. It's also one another. The second is the white gay man by male gaze, the predominant community now, which means that that leads to patriarchy and white supremacy spill. And now we understand our privilege. I understand the way that beauty regimes code me positively and how that coding is detrimental to women, people of color, distinct populations, and queer bodies. The amount of preparation in society that exists for white men like me before I have to engage with y'all is laughable. I will probably also never have body image problems or have to be denied a job because of my sick performance. But beauty regimes nonetheless are still without flaw. That is our argument about if their claim is simply that merely because we are white, any act of affirmation is co-option, then how do you account for white queer bodies? Obviously, in the affirmative, in the negatives world, then those bodies were always ugly and would always be in a state of self-hatred, which is our claim that the way that those white queer bodies should operationalize themselves is to break beauty standards down by making an affirmation for ugly, which means the permutation overcomes the majority of their links.
Anytime. 26 seconds. Yeah. Can I get those cards back?
Yeah.
Next time I see him,
Imagine me get there because I have to explain. Yeah. Real doesn't matter. I went.
to be fair, he's in charge.
Yeah. It's hammered so much. You do it.
No handles. Is everybody ready?
Yar.
They say that we should affirm ugly. In the status quo, we are what is considered ugly. If affirming ugly is a way to break down the binary between beauty and ugly, then you vote negative because we are already what is seen as ugly, i.e. your ballot would mean that you are breaking down the binary because you are voting for what is already assumed as ugly. That is breaking down the binary that they're talking about. We are able to solve the affirmative. This is a uniqueness question that they are not coming to grips with now. The two impacts that they are going for is the psychological violence that they say that we get. Psychological means inside of your mind. That is why we say that through our poetry, we're able to. The non-listed threat is having meaninglessness, lovelessness, and hopelessness. Through affirming ourselves, we are able to get out of that psychological violence that they're talking about now. They say that the exclusion DA, we specifically talk about, yes, he said there's no safe place for the black woman in the space. Yes, that is true. That is what we're talking about. We have to find ways to survive inside and outside the space. But under our framework, which has gone uncontested, that is who best for the political agency and right to liberation of the press as it relates to the resolution and the debate community, specifically relates to this room. We are not worried about outside detrimental because it simply talks about how we use aesthetics as a way to brush back against the form of existence that they're talking about. They say that, okay, give me the perm stuff. Also, one quick thing. We are able to solve the entirety of their affirmative by voting neg and their two impacts, but they are not able to solve for the nihilism that we are talking about within this debate space. Now, okay, on perm, Sierra took off her wig and symbolized that she was not going to go through the assimilation process of burning her hair to comfort white people. The perm does nothing but burn it inside while appearing a white girl of comfort. We refuse to perm. That is assimilation. The end of the day, I'm not coming to grips with this. Reclamation, the end does not apply. Sierra, I do not have the social, political power to determine beauty standards, saying we are ugly, saying we are beautiful, and affirming ourselves challenges the binary of beauty. The app only recreated because they are ahistorical. Beyonce is not darkened because blacks do not value darkness. Only lights because white standards, since they do not understand the history of weeds and bleach creams, they must lose also privilege. DA, they
Their failure to
confront their privilege means that their performance and epistemology are embedded within their
privilege.
Therefore, any type of action that they claim are doing for the other is just a form of co-option.
Right here,
This is a perfect example when they say that we come before you, i.e. putting their beauty before us, that we need to become like them because we are not good enough. Larry Nelson simply talks about any link to the white estate needs to be destroyed, i.e. they are a radicalization of this white estate, which is the reason why I can't work together. What else? Lupita DA, they cannot control how these aesthetics politically point to the part of a Semitic norms of whiteness in all of these case DAs functions as disaster to the perm and as a reason to reject them. Also, give me the perm.
Yeah, because I got you on that.
Their perm also is an unmarked set of cultural power that allows them to impose
Will you say something?
Yeah, it's on. I saved it. Call 2 AR. It's kind of short.
there's no word for how the alternative has solved the affirmative. The second, that the permutation solves any risk of a link to the alternative, and we have disadds to the parts that we want. Do we have a risk of not solving? Now the case outweighs in terms of criticism. First, on the meta level, beauty standards allow for dominant group to exclude, objectify, and dehumanize individuals to assume this occupation of less than. We have a couple examples. First, the Nazi occupation of Germany, we resulted in Aryan beauty standards in order to exclude the Jewish group, resulted in dehumanization, putting them into concentration camps where we dehumanize people, and resulted in the death and exclusion. Second is the Sarah Bartman example. Our evidence indicates that we brought Sarah Bartman over as an exotic commodity to be bought and sold. Our evidence says that cites the example of how she was put into London circuses and seen as a foreign example of how to prove that we could dehumanize these people out there that were so freaky with huge butts off in Africa. This is the problem that we are criticizing. Second is in terms of criticism, they are nothing more than the new real standard of beauty, Barbie. They just create a new hierarchy of beauty standards to allow for justification to exclude other populations. Just because it's not based on the white, black binary doesn't mean it's not based on the hierarchy of who is more beautiful than whom. And next is the psychology debate. We saw for the in-round psychological violence that occurs on a day-to-day basis, the difference between how women have to act in the debate space as opposed to how men are able to act in the debate space, how I am able to act in the debate space as opposed to how the debate team I'm debating is allowed to act. This is something we saw because we unveiled it's not based on the arguments or the rationale, but based on aesthetic tendencies that we have in public debates. That's our Burma evidence. And we also saw that in the psychological level because we saw for things like that's how it turns to criticism. And we have an external impact because we saw the psychology or the depression and anxiety that we get from this type of judgment, internalizing the gaze, knowing that we're always subject to another person's opinions about how we act and how we present ourselves in the room. Next on the case, on the criticism. Sorry. First is the ontology debate. They said blackness not foundational. The ugliest a prerequisite to whiteness. First is history. They have no explanation of how black bodies were selected to get onto the slave ship. Our claim is that the dominant enlightenment aesthetic category was evident before the Middle Passage, before the fabrication of whiteness. Second is our Armstrong evidence. There's an ontology within the black body intrinsically. Our claim is that the body is simply a body, and aesthetics gives it grammar. Modernity is first and foremost a game of aesthetics. The relation to bodies is only through the state which reproduces their impact and causes massive violence. A third argument is that you should not be isn't that you should become the slave owner. Is that the colonized through aesthetics acted like colonizers. Steinbeck says the aesthetic contract furthered the extension of imperial power means breaking down aesthetics as a prerequisite to challenging ugliness. Now they say that they are the most ugly, you should vote negative. However, all this is doing is telling them they're ugly, which is already happening in the status quo. Our Taylor evidence says that we need to indict empirical structures are structures that evade criticism right now in order to break down the hierarchy. This is why the permutation solved. The permutation both is one tests the competition of the solvency, but also proves that they do something that we can't. They cannot do something that we can. That is calling the dominant structures in their place of privilege. They say this is a reason why this is key. First is that it solves this. Our Taylor evidence says that criticizing structures that traditionally evade criticism not only challenges the dichotomy, it deconstructs why it exists in the first place. Next is that we can affirm beauty, or not beauty, but we can affirm the individuality of ourselves, but it will never matter unless we have a beauty standard, or unless we criticize the standards that determine beauty in the first place. First is the burning dissad. This is not applicable to the AC because test of competition should frame the competitiveness of their dissads, because it's not just a question of whether or not we are stealing their advocacy. We do nothing to steal their poetry. We just say that there's no reason why it can't exist while calling out beauty paradigms that exist in the status quo. Next is the privileged DA. They say we don't confront our privilege. However, we today that's entirely through through the round. We say that privilege that Nathan and I both have is the idea that because we are white, we are viewed as more beautiful in society. Particularly, even if you don't buy that, I still access this argument because there's a inherent because as a woman, you're always considered ugly because you're considered less than the ideal perfect man because your body is prone to dumb things like leakages. That's our Prisbolo evidence. Next, it's Lupita to say, however, our analysis turns this on them. You're not, because you're not seen beautiful. Lupita was not seen beautiful until the white culture said that we thought she was beautiful. Lupita probably thought she was beautiful prior to winning awards, but it wasn't until the dominant groups of power said, okay, good person intrinsically. It's about challenging the cultures that determine these aesthetic tendencies in the first place. Next is the commodification evidence. However, we answered this above with the Prisbolo evidence says that who says that they commodified her through her aesthetic tendencies and used it as a justification to dehumanize. That means we're bringing root cause examples of why the plan is a bad idea. Now, there's no justification why their performance is empirically. When they do not solve the act, ask yourself at the end of the round, what do they do to deconstruct beauty standards? They probably reinvent them. Extend all of what Nathan's analysis that was dropped about the Barber evidence that says that inevitably, even if you say it's about yourself, the white man will co-opt it in order to create a beauty paradigm to exclude you that terminally turns the alternative.
Wilderson card.
Yep.
Okay, so yeah, it was rendering in UNC, so that's probably it.
Yeah. It's on our flash drive. Do y'all have it?
Oh, I gave it to
Nathan, you have the flash drive?
Right about this.
Do you have a flashlight?
I think from the ground.
Oh, yeah, here it is. It's called like aesthetics.
I'm sorry for my brother harassing the stream.
Yeah. Huh?
Sorry, my brother was harassing the stream.
No, he's actually.
What did he do?
Thank you.
Just like harassing people apparently.
He's harassing people. No, he was just the only one that was telling me what's wrong with the street.
Did it work okay?
Yeah, we're doing it through recording his YouTube
On
channel.
whatever evidence you're
So we're just gonna do that.
like the solid SQL. You could just email it.
Yeah. What's your email?
The letters KT.
Uh,
55.
you just stream on the Ricardo's channel. Like halfway through the stream, laughs and then like that or something. Give me
are just so archaic. They got one in the back room and that's it.
It's like, what do you mean there aren't outlets on the floor of most team 500 students? No one here who wants to be here? Can we move this down so we can actually see them? Alright, congratulations to both teams. The decision is a 3-0 for the negative for Fresno State. Would either of you two like to go first? Okay. So here's my thing. I think there's a mutual agreement about the importance of criticizing aesthetics in academic settings like this debate. The negative is consistently making an argument at the top that if certain bodies are marked as ugly, and if the AF is true that I should affirm ugly, then I vote negative. And I don't think this is ever answered by the AF at all in the debate. I think that the closest you get is at the end of the 2AR, where you just say, they say basically vote neg to affirm ugly, but that just means that they see themselves as ugly and that's bad. I don't think that's true, because that's kind of like what you're saying is a productive strategy. And I don't think it answers what, I don't mean to overly simplify it as this, but it does become almost like a vote neg to vote AF. But it's more like an even if question that I don't think ever gets resolved by the affirmative. I also see this just as a separate issue from the rest of the debate. So, and nothing else really entered. I mean, I looked at everything else. I tried to consider how these things would interplay, but there's really no explicit work done by the affirmative that would kind of compel me to look for other reasons to why that strategy is bad, or to take your sort of this as a permutation /alt and use that to apply to the argument on top. And so because it's a separate issue, I just kind of like that. That's just where I vote. And even the 1AR, just like even explicitly says that when you encounter beauty regimes, you should deconstruct them. Yeah. And so I think that by voting neg, I deconstruct the beauty regimes that I encounter in debates.
Man?
Yeah.
Do you think that the answer, which is like Maggie occupies position of ugly, answers that at all?
I'm not sure, because there's also the question about even if it might be just a question of like who does it better than, I guess. I mean, well, not just that, but if they're winning the argument that. I mean, obviously, the AF is definitely, or the neg is definitely making arguments that that the idea that that there are lots of ways that we view ugly doesn't account for the fact that black bodies are very particularly viewed as ugly, and that even women who are not men, so are like ugly in certain respects, are still white, fair, all this other stuff.
Do you think that obviously we aren't doing this work explicitly, but do you think that if we win the ontology debate stuff, that like ugliness is itself a category that it doesn't matter if they're like exemplifying more ugly, because it's like they are only reflecting.
That actually raises something else that I was gonna talk about later. Is that, and it's because no, it's fine. It's because that I would actually like to have more of an explanation for what it means to affirm ugly in a way that sort of I guess I sort of just get the initial premise that if we just affirm ugly, then we no longer make the beauty ugly distinctions and whatnot. But when you talk about things like those particular ontological categories and why those are things that we should confront first, and why, like you said, the body is just a body, it's the aesthetics would provide it meaning. I would like more of an explanation for why I don't want to say an overturning, because it's not really an overturning or a reversal, but why just what it means to affirm ugly, because it just seems like they said that could be just a negative ballot. And like I said, a lot of this is just no real explicit answers through the AF, and it was a little bit, that's just very simple. I do think that the AF probably doesn't really need as much of a discussion of the impacts on top, because I think that they're also trying to resolve all of those, the social exclusion and psychological violence, and just kind of say that the way that they sort of deploy their aesthetic political strategies are useful to fight against beauty regimes. I think though that without an explanation for how the alt soul is better, there is a fundamental uniqueness question that black bodies are already seen as the ugly, and so without any real idea for how the AF can affirm ugly or what it means to affirm ugly, I don't know why I would go affirmative. And maybe more explanation of some of your offensive arguments. For example, when you say things like the alternative creates new standards of beauty to determine who is and who is not beautiful, you bring up the example of when white people see a black woman as being beautiful, then all of a sudden she is beautiful. I think that maybe a better articulation that doesn't rely on the white gaze to make that determination would be better. I don't think you really have that discussion about your impact. So I just think that just situating your discussion of the offense against the alternative, and like I said, it doesn't really enter into my decision, but situating your discussion of the offense against the alternative in ways that demonstrate what they do particularly would recreate these new standards of beauty, not how, for example, the white community will see what is beautiful and will see a black woman as being beautiful, and that becomes a new standard. Yes, but that was still a determination made by the white community for them, not something they do for themselves.
Do you think the my mom is beautiful bites into that?
Well,
if we blew that out more, you think that's in that direction you're trying to
Well,
go?
possibly, but you have to, like I said, you that is definitely the sort of link that you want to go for.
Yeah.
But you just need to demonstrate why that determination for themselves is better, how that creates something new.
Yeah.
And I also think that for the negative, I think that probably is something that you could capitalize a little bit more on to find stronger elements of competition. I think you have some really strong arguments in the negative block that you're not extending past the into the 2NR. Particularly the discussion about how that sort of affirmation of like when you say, I love my mom because you are beautiful, that as an aesthetic strategy is one that is very useful and viable as a survival mechanism. Now these are kind of talked about a little bit, but I would just like to see more of just this, instead of trying to say you don't get to perm because of all these things and you just quickly extend a bunch of distance, just say no, there is competition. We think we should affirm ourselves as beautiful, or I should say I love you because you are beautiful. These are determinations that we can make for ourselves, not ones that other people can make for us. And then I think that to answer all their arguments for how that creates new standards of beauty, you extend the argument that you're making in the block that also doesn't extend into the 2AR about how you don't occupy the kind of social positions where those kind of standards become sort of universalized. You don't create a new binary because you're not in a social position to create that binary. And I think those are really, really good, compelling arguments in the block that don't really get carried on into the 2AR or the 2NR. I think you're mostly focused on just answering all the permutation with just quickly extending all these things. I think, for me at least, I think that finding that one sort of distinction element is probably more important and to capitalize on it. And then you just frame the 2NR as be two things. One, if they are correct about all their stuff, you still vote neg. But two, if not, we have given you a reason why our affirmation of beauty, one, is not the same as the ones you are criticizing, and two, is a better strategy for us and to solve for social exclusion psychodynamics.
I don't differ very significantly. I also start my decision from the position of what does it mean to affirm ugly. I think your weakest card is more about just deconstructing the notions of beauty, but if your argument is correct that sort of black female bodies are viewed as ugly, then I think the act of self-affirming to say we are beautiful also deconstructs that notion. And so I wish that there was more of a distinction, or just that it was more clear to me why that strategy doesn't sort of fall within that framework. So then I sort of asked myself, can the dominant subject break down that binary, which I think is sort of a separate solvency deficit. I'm not all that impressed by your Barber evidence that would sort of be the offense that sort of cuts across that claim, the co-option kind of stuff, and so I become a little more concerned that even the AF process that the AF process could be co-opted to still continually exclude black women. I think something that would help you here is sort of explaining more just the process of co-option in that instance. Your Barber evidence is sort of talking about how white men continually change their notions of what is beautiful to fit themselves, but I don't know how that process goes down when it's an issue of Candace and Sierra say to themselves, I'm beautiful. How does a white man come in and change that? I don't know, and there's probably several logical explanations, but I don't feel like that's really clear to me. So I end up just concluding that self-love and affirmation
versus performance. And without a robust sense of what deconstruction is, you know, it's just in this version of debate by the 2AR kind of just becomes calling out the dominant structures. I think that's a weaker strategy. One of the arguments I think that you need to grapple with is a little bit more would be what you described as the libido DA, in that in the current social and political climate, white aesthetic is attached to white bodies. You can call out the structure, but then it just becomes the new cool or the new beautiful, even if that's not how it's intended from the act of criticism. And so that question of the take-up of the criticism by other people, I think is one that needs to be reckoned with. I also think, yeah, to get some more traction with this sort of commodification of our evidence, it's not just linking to something as being beautiful, but particularly beauty in the context of self-love or familial love. And I don't think the particular examples being talked about there are like that, but I think you can use it to make your own examples. Looking at like Dove's self-love campaign, or particular examples where the notion of self-love or familial love is being commodified will make that more compelling and tangible. Because right now it seems like that's describing a completely different process.
Yep.
The other thing I would say, yeah, with this new Barbie or the new beauty standard, I think is a potential for offense, but then I need a direct response about why social status isn't required for this, or social status is relative, it can play out that way. And I think there's a little bit of that in the 1AR with your discussion of sort of diaspora beauty standards, but it's not substantial enough, not carried through. And I think what Phil talked about, coming up with other examples that aren't dependent on the white gaze evaluating beauty standard would make that more powerful.
Another question, when we talk about like diaspora, should we be drawing relationships between like the main power structures went to Africa, right? So when we talk about like even in like Brazil and like certain parts of like Latin America, like their beauty is also based off their skin complexion, based off white standards of beauty. Should we be spending more time on that, or is that not something?
I think that was sufficient in this debate.
Okay.
I also think the sort of articulation that came out more in the 2AR than earlier in the debate, not only we can do it for ourselves, but other people, like anyone who is placed in the position of ugly, you can't just tell them you're ugly, be okay with that. That is something that has to come from the position of the person who's put there.
Yeah.
Like anyone can do it for themselves. You provide a model for people in other contexts to take up if they want to, if they're ready to, if they're able to.
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay. Well, I was just thinking, in the 2AC, do you think it would have been a better decision to just have a clear rule of the ballot, be like the rule of the ballot is to affirm who is ugly? Because one of the biggest issues I was trying to get at is that like the status quo already says that they are ugly, that I am ugly, that those lower social groups are ugly. What is important is to say that the dominant powers are ugly in order to break the dichotomy, like a bigger framing issue on that. Does that make more sense?
I'm not sure what you mean by when you say that, to see the dominant powers as ugly.
Okay.
Well, I guess just given the nature of the 1AC, I'm not sure if that's what your argument is or where you want to take it, I guess. But, I mean, unless it's like just to kind of reverse it, and like we just need to flip the standards and see these sort of white standards for what constitutes beauty and see that as ugly. But I don't know how that like really fits in with the rest of your kind of discussion. I guess like the better situated role of the ballot would just be like, look, this is kind of the impact that we think is important. So the question is, who best deals with this? Our deconstruction by the affirmation of ugly, or the corporate affirmation of ugly, is the way that we deconstruct the way that beauty has kind of standards of beauty have created these regimes, which lead to like social exclusion and psychic violence. Our deconstructive approach is the way that we go about solving for this. They would have an approach that says, no, as individuals, we need to see ourselves as being beautiful, and then just a question of which one is best able to resolve those kind of questions. And thing is, you just have to have like more specific and better offense against why, when individuals see themselves as being beautiful, why that's bad. Because I think that a lot of the reasons why it could be co-opted, I guess, still rely on sort of white assessments. So like for the reason that and maybe they're correct when they say things like, look, there is a question here that, you know, black bodies will never be seen as beautiful unless they conform to those white standards. So your co-option argument is really not unique against their alternative, because when the white, so when it's like, oh, we'll take this one person and we'll celebrate that black body as being beautiful, it's because it more closely mirrors or reflects white standards of beauty. So I think that you still have to find a more specific articulation of your offense situated within how we would just see ourselves.
I think that would be a better use of time in the discussion of the firm, because at least for me, I don't really
Yeah.
know how that functions. And so that could become a big factor in my decision.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. I'm also not sure. Like, I get the situation where you're saying, look, standards of competition, otherwise we get playing debates. I mean, that would be totally fine. And so I kind of understand that means that they need to have reasons why your strategy is bad and all that other stuff. But the other question would be, like, I'm not sure like what the permutation would encompass, if it is actually doing anything, or how the strategy situated or created by the negative in terms of these sort of poetic expression or aesthetic representations of black body and talking about self-love, how that can also kind of coincide with your deconstructed things of ugly. And especially if, you know, you can actually say that maybe there is some level of exclusion, because we would just say we have to, like you said, what would happen if we saw ourselves as ugly? That is presumably what you say the question that we should start asking ourselves, as opposed to seeing myself as saying I am beautiful. And so I think you just make a sort of exclusivity argument or not exclusively, but you can definitely say like we have offense against their argument. I don't think you really need the permutation other than just to say they have no reason why our method is bad. We have reasons why theirs is bad.
Well, that does go to the framing for the firm, I thought, which was just like, my thought for the permutation was hopefully that means you wouldn't have checked out on the we're ugly thing, because it's like, if you are ugly, that doesn't disprove that we shouldn't have a heuristic.
Okay, all right.
That was the thought process behind the permutation. Like, we get it, like you exemplify ugliness, but your exemplification of ugliness does not disprove our argument that says we should affirm ugliness.
Okay. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.